Good evening, everybody, or good morning, or good afternoon, depending on where in the world you are. Today, we're going to have a workshop here talking about how you can deploy your TypeScript web apps to the cloud. And who's this we we're talking about? My name is John Papa, and I work for Microsoft as a developer advocate. And my cohort in crime here today is
Craig Shoemaker, also work for Microsoft as a content developer.
So Craig and I are really excited to talk to you today about this app that we're going to build together. This is hands-on, two hands, right? Even if you have one hand, you're good to go. We just need to get together, build the app, and deploy it together. But first, what are we going to do? So what are you going to do today? Let's think about this. First, you're going to get an app. Everybody likes to deploy with different kinds of apps: Angular, React, Svelte, Vue, Ember, Backbone, Flutter. Got all these different things out there. Whatever your favorite is, you can choose your own. Today, I'm going to give you the choice of 4 of these. So you're going to choose your own web frameworks. The app is ready to go, and we're going to create and deploy this app to Azure Static Web Apps. We're going to show you how simple it is to get there. We're also going to talk about something called fallback routes, which is really important to some of the static web app designs, which allows us to basically use client-side routing instead of worrying about server-side. And finally, we'll look at how we can change your CI/CD workflow, because there's bunches of options. The default options are going to work for us, but then we're going to see how we can change some of these. And probably, last but not least, we're going to have some fun doing this along the way. Nobody here has more fun than my friend, Craig the Shoemaker. So,
I try.
But first, let's give them a look here, Craig, at what they're going to build. So this is an app called Shop at Home. And Shop at Home is basically you're stuck at home and you're a developer and you're building an app that lets people connect from home to other people who can go out and shop for items for them. Maybe it's your grandmother or grandfather and they have some items sent to their house. You build this great app. You have a great idea. Because after all, that's what developers do. We come up with these great ideas and we just want to deploy apps. So after we have this idea, we think, geez, this is great. I've got my code. I've got it in GitHub. I know exactly what I'm going to do. And then I push it to GitHub. Nice and easy. Well, now I have to think about CI/CD. How am I going to get it from GitHub to my cloud, like Azure, for example? Okay. And I've got to run npm run build. And what if I have APIs I want to talk to? Some kind of serverless functions or Node Express? And then once I have my content HTML being served from a cloud, and then my APIs are on another server, I have to worry about this problem called CORS. These cross-origin requests have to be handled. So I need like a reverse proxy. Okay, well, I also need to worry about security because SSL is super important. And I want to have my own custom domain. Like I want shopathome.dev. So I have to figure out how to set that up. And I probably want authentication so I know you are who you say you are, and some authorization, so I know you can do specific things and roles. And of course, we're all around the world these days, so we want the app to be as close to you as possible, so we want global scale. Oh boy. I started this out by saying, we're developers and we have great ideas about building apps. That's what we do. But we have to think about all these things to build our apps. And there's more choices, right? We can do this in Angular or React, maybe Svelte or Vue.js. Whatever your favorite framework is, they all go through something called a build process. So this is how the web has changed in the last 10 years. We used to just put a script tag on a page and things were good. Now we run npm run build. And when we do that, things start spinning inside the computer. And what happens is we ultimately get 3 main types of assets. We could have more, but HTML for our content documents, JavaScript for our code, and CSS for our styles. That's really all that's happening. So we need that npm run build to build our apps, output these assets, and then light up our applications. And that's what Azure Static Web Apps is going to do for you today. We're going to show you how you can use Static Web Apps to get your content up and onto the web. In short, it's going to build and host your app, and we'll give you the app to start with. You can also set up authentication and authorization. And you can set up APIs optionally if you want them with Azure Functions. And of course, we're going to take a look at how the CI/CD works because we're going to use everything running through GitHub and GitHub Actions. Now, there's this great diagram that kind of shows us visually like how this actually is going to work. We're going to give you a repo. And this repo's got in it an application. There'll be a folder with your app in it. And what we're going to do is push that up to GitHub. And then it's going to fire off a GitHub action for you. Where's this action coming from? Well, Azure Static Web Apps is going to create this GitHub action for you, which will then point up to Azure, build your content and deploy it, and then build your APIs and deploy those if you have those. And collectively, both of those are known as static web apps, which then users around the world will just be able to see your demo. So we're going to do this today together. We're going to walk through a tutorial. So get your fingers ready, get your keyboards all set. We're going to walk through the demo together. Craig and I are going to basically go through something called a Learn module that's going to walk through each step to get you from point zero, having no app, to having an app in a repo and deploying it up to Azure. So here's the first step. In our demo, we're going to start off with having GitHub. Then we're going to add some of those features we mentioned, like having SSL and automatically getting global scale. We're going to hook in some of our CI/CD, and then we'll show you how you could set up authentication and authorization. It's not part of this workshop, but I'll show you a demo that gets you to that point as well. Because in the end, all of those things that we're going to do are handled just by the steps we're going to run through today with Azure Static Web Apps. So this is a quick view of the app that you're going to build. This is the link that you're going to go to, and we'll keep showing you this link, so you can either write it down or go there now. It's at TSConf-learn. That's aka.ms, TSConf-learn. Maybe we can throw that into the chat too, if Alessandra, you can do that for us. And as a quick reminder, I've neglected to say that we have Alessandro Sigala in the chat right now. He works with Craig and I, and he's going to be there if you have any questions along the way to help answer those. So our first exercise, and I'm going to give you a preview of this, is how you can sign into Learn, Microsoft Learn, with your GitHub credentials. So if you've never gone into Learn before, it's super easy. It's going to ask you a couple steps. The first step, you're going to go to Learn at this link that I'll keep showing you. And once you go there, you're going to click on Sign in the upper right-hand corner. Once you do that, this is the only tricky part. Instead of typing in your email address and all that, there's a link that says Sign in Options. If you click on that link where it says Sign in Options, you'll then be able to choose Sign in with GitHub. And from there, it should be very easy for you to use your GitHub credentials with following the prompts. And our first step is going to be to generate this repo, and we'll do this together. And we're going to generate the repo from a link. We're going to build an app. You're going to get to choose Vue, Svelte, React, or Angular. And then we're going to walk through the Learn module. And as a reminder here, the Learn module has what we call conceptual units and exercises. What does that mean? It means the conceptual stuff is where we're going to explain what's happening, and Craig and I will go through that together with you. And then the exercises are the hands-on parts. So we're going to kind of do both pieces, but we're mostly just going to focus on the exercises. So with that, Craig, are you ready?
Yes, I am. We just got done watching like some of the prettiest slides you'd see on the web, so I'd say we're ready to go.
And you were supposed to be watching ours, you know? So exactly. If folks, you click on that link, and I'll go back to that slide for just a moment. If you click on the link that's right here, which is aka.ms TSConf-learn, that's aka.ms TSConf-learn. Go to that link, and it will bring you to this page right here. So Craig, what is Microsoft Learn? Like, what are we doing here?
So this is a place where you essentially get to work through interactive tutorials, and they're often scenario-based. So as you go on to Learn and you look at the different, what they're called modules are available, you can kind of see like here, we're publishing an entire app up to the cloud, and other modules will give you different types of scenarios that you can work through. So it's just cool because it really gives you the step-by-step process in order to make that to happen.
Yeah, and this one here, it's called Publishing an Angular, React, Svelte, or Vue app to Azure Static Web Apps. So we're going to pick which one. We're not going to publish all four because that'd be kind of crazy. But we'll do it this way here. So a couple of things to point out. Our learning objectives, we're going to choose the app. We're going to run it locally, just make sure it works on our machines. And then we're going to publish it to the web.
And I think we're going with Svelte today, right?
Yeah, let's go with Svelte. Why not?
Okay.
I kind of like that. And I think it's Alessandro's favorite these days. I think he's actually got a book he wrote about Svelte too. So a couple of things as prereqs. You have to be familiar with one of these. I assume that you use one of these web frameworks. If you don't, you could also use Gatsby or Hugo, or whatever else you might use. You'll need Node, the LTS version, and some form of Git locally on your machine so you can get the code.
So interestingly, there you list two things but only have one link. What's going on there?
I'm glad you asked, sir. So if you click on that link, when you get this version here, where it says LTS recommended for most users, that's when you're going to get. It also comes with not just Node, but it comes with a little bit of Git as well. So
okay,
you're going to get the basics.
You get them both with that one. Okay, nice.
Yep, you will get Git.
Right.
And then you'll get a GitHub account.
Right.
So we're going to use GitHub, so you have to have an account. And we're going to use Visual Studio Code because that's just the best editor out there. So
not that we're biased.
Fight me on it.
Yeah.
All right, and the basic stuff here is we're going to go through an intro, then we're going to get started. We're going to plan our app out, then we'll create it, and then we'll go ahead and add a fallback route. And just to make sure everything works, we'll have a quick quiz towards the end, and we'll do that together, won't we, Craig?
Yep.
All right, so if once you have this page, you want to click on Introduction, just like I did, you'll notice a little bit of navigation here. We can click on this little drop down at the top, and that will let you get to any of the units. If you get on the wrong one for some reason, you can always go back to another one from here. And at the top, as Craig mentioned, we're going to click on Svelte. If you choose Angular or React or Vue or Svelte, your call. The instructions will change slightly based upon which one you choose because some of the syntaxes in the code are different.
But essentially, most of the steps are the same. So if you pick a different one, what you see us doing will look very familiar.
Yeah, and we'll call out the places that they would be different.
Yeah.
And on this page, we already have learned what Azure Static Web Apps are, and there's a very familiar diagram here that we just saw on the slide deck. Go ahead, Craig.
I just wanted it says it's in preview right now. So what's the distinction there for people to know?
That's a great call out. So in the purple there, you'll see these things are notes. This means that it's in preview. That's my interpretation, not Microsoft's, is it's kind of like a beta or an RC. It's not quite out for people to use in production yet. And that's because they're still adding features and rounding things out. We're collecting feedback. So if you have feedback on this, please enter it in the chat and we'll bring it right to the team.
It's good time to have your voice heard.
It is. Optional APIs. We're not going to add a serverless functions to it today, but you can do that if you wanted to. So I'm going to skip that part. And then the rest of this is just showing you kind of what you get. You get a free SSL cert. You're going to get GitHub integration. You get globally distributed web hosting. And you also get these preview URLs that you can use, which we'll take a look at. This is all choose your own adventure. Once you get the code, you'll see Angular, React, and Svelte and Vue inside your code. So you get to pick which one you want. And Craig, this is the first place where what you mentioned shows up. Because I chose Svelte, the app is showing down here in the image that it's the Svelte version of the app running, which is using orange, and then you'll see the Svelte logo in the corner.
Very nice.
If you have a different color, let's say I chose React. Now I scroll back down, you'll see the React logo and React Blue for the app, just so we can visually see a difference.
All right.
I'm going to go back and choose Svelte so I don't mess up.
Okay.
So once we do that, let's go to Unit 2, Getting Started.
All right, now we're going to get our hands dirty a little bit here.
Craig, it says I should create a repository.
All right. So,
that kind of makes sense.
Yeah. Well, we're going to go from GitHub, like you said, down to the local machine and run it there. So we got to start off with something. And so, okay, we have...
I'll put them side by side so you can see
situation them. Here. Okay, so you've got something here that may be a little bit unfamiliar to people. What's we're not really cloning or forking at this point. What's going on here?
Yeah, this is really cool. So somewhere in the last year, I assume, because I just learned about this about 6 months ago, or a couple months ago. 2020 has been a long year. Somewhere in this year, I learned about this feature. It's called template generation, where you're on a repo. And let me just go back to the main part of this repo because we can show it. If a repository has a template, you'll see this green button where it says use this template right on the repository. It's very cool. And that effectively brings you to the same page that this link on the left brought us to from the Learn module. What it does is it creates effectively a copy of the repository in your organization. under John Papa in this case. Why is that important? Why is that different than forking? When you fork, you get the entire Git history. You get everything that came with the old repo. But maybe you just want the code. Like, you're just going to use my app real quick. You don't need my entire Git history. So to clean things up, all you have to do, and in the right-hand side of the URL has /generate, is it lets you effectively create a new repository using the other one as a template. And I'm going to call mine my static web app, which is what step 3 over on the left told me to do.
Nice.
I only do what it tells me. I will not have a description, which is not good. We should do that. I'm going to make it public. And I'm also going to choose include all branches. You don't have to do this. The main branch will be just fine for you, but I'm going to do this because I'm going to pick a different branch because we're going to go off the script a little bit, Craig, aren't we?
A little bit.
All right, so I'm going to click on the button right here because that was step 4 it told me to do. Create a repository from the template. Now notice it says I'm in my repo organization. It was generated from that one, but it's going to show the code in just a moment.
Okay. All right.
Once
so
this is done, I'm going to go over to VS Code. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, once this is done generating, then it looks like what we're going to do is bring this down onto your machine, right?
Yes. And it says it should only take a few seconds, but of course, because we're live, it is not taking a few seconds. I'm going to refresh, see what happens.
We forgot to feed the hamsters inside your computer.
Yes, we did.
This afternoon.
Well, let's make sure. There's always some tricks to these things. Let's make sure I didn't already have a repo called that.
I think the validation would have stopped you.
You would think. Like I didn't have a double one called that somewhere. My static web app doesn't even exist yet because it's like still spinning.
No, I guess not.
Okay, GitHub, let's go. Let's go back a page. I'm going to generate a second one just to see if we can do it. 2.
Nice.
Public.
Aptly named.
We'll see how many times we can get GitHub to try to bring up a repo.
Out of all the places I thought there might be a hiccup during this demo, this is not where I thought it might be.
No, it shouldn't have been here at all. And I hope, are any of you running into this problem? Oh, good. We got it up right.
That was better.
Let's see if that one comes up. All right, we're going to roll with number 2 for me. Hopefully you didn't run into this problem either. If you did, please type it into the chat and Alessandra will help you out there.
Yeah. So
we have to remember that I named mine Static Web App 2 because that one's still running, and I'm just going to close it because that's a distraction.
Yep.
All right, so now it says open a terminal on your computer. Boy, it's very demanding, Craig. So let's open up. I must have VS Code on my computer already. There it is. Nice. I'm going to use the terminal down in the bottom.
Okay.
And I'm going to go to a folder called Play because that's where I put my Play stuff. And I'm going to click Copy right here, paste it in there, and it wants me to type in the name of the repo, which I have to remember to put 2, and then replace this with my name because that's where I put it. So good. I just cloned it. Then I'm going to go into that folder. Then I'm going to go into the Svelte app. Now this is where if you chose React or Angular, you'll see a different instruction there in line 4.
And why are we doing this? What's the point of going in there?
2 reasons. One, it told me to, which is always a good reason. And the second reason is that we're going into the folder for static web apps. And then the Svelte app, so we can run npm install. We're going to run all those dependencies in there.
Okay. So you're going to get the dependencies of that client app then?
Yes.
Okay.
You're going to see, I'm going to run npm install, and it ran super fast. And then we're going to do npm run dev, because that's going to run it locally.
Okay.
And if this works, it should build, and then I'm going to open a tab over here, because the next step says click on localhost 5000, which I can do right in the browser.
There we go.
And there is an application. Oops, I'm in the wrong branch. I forgot I was going to switch branches on everybody.
That's right.
So this is my special thing. I'm actually going to switch over to a different branch because we want to show you TypeScript Svelte.
I think it's the...
Oh, I'm in the wrong repo.
No, it's Svelte /TS, I believe is how you named your branch.
Oh, did I? I don't think that's the case.
Oh, all right.
I want to see if I'm in the right folder. Git clone static web app 2. I think I went to the wrong folder. That's what happened.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, because I had the 2 thing going on earlier.
Yeah.
All right, so let's fix that real quick. CD, my static web app 2. There we go. CD svelte. And then I had run npm install.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah, he got that figured out. npm install ran super fast, so that should have been our first indication we were in the wrong folder there.
Yeah, and that's why we've got Alessandro looking at chat so we can kind of hear back from him. So thank you, Alessandro. He says that they're saying you're in the wrong folder and should be app 2. You are all correct. All right. So now we're going to do npm run dev, which you can do here. And actually, this is where we're going to deviate from the script, right?
Yeah, because you're going to go to the other folder.
Svelte TS, is that what it was?
I believe so.
Okay. So let me npm install again. You all don't have to do this part, but I'm going to run this with TypeScript, which is not, I think, in there by default. And then I'm going to run npm run dev because it told me to. And then let's close this browser. We'll click back here. And there we go.
There we go.
So now our app should look like this. We've only got 2 routes here. And we've got strawberries, sliced bread, and apples for right now. This might be a good place to pause for folks. Alessandro, if there's any questions, go ahead and type them into the chat here. Maybe we can read them out loud to folks. Now, Craig, we only deviated in one spot, but let's kind of review what we did up here.
Mm-hmm.
We opened a terminal. I'm using the VS Code terminal. We cloned our repo, which is where I went wrong because I typed the wrong thing in. We went into the folder. Then we chose our Svelte app folder. We npm installed to get our dependencies, and then just ran our app locally.
Right.
Are we on Azure yet?
I don't believe so. I don't think we've even touched it yet.
Exactly.
Okay. So
go ahead.
I was just looking at Alessandro's bringing in a question. People are saying that they didn't clone the branch. Yeah, it should work even if you didn't clone it because we generated from a template.
Yes.
So that would be the distinction there. It's just a little bit of a different approach in order to get the code into your account, like John said, without having to have the entire history available. You just get the code.
Yeah, and if you do want to use more than one branch, I'm just going to click on this real quick. When we do the use this template, you'll notice this checkbox down here, include all branches. If you don't check that, you're only going to get the main or the master branch, depending on whatever the default branch is for that repo. So I made sure I checked mine because I wanted to use a different branch. Let's get out of there.
Okay.
Okay, so we've got it running here. Next steps is to kill the app. So I'm going to Control-C in the terminal. So we just finished 2 units. We've effectively run our app locally. We have our code, and we know the app works. So I'm now moving on to Unit 3. Unit 3 is where we learn about Azure Static Web Apps. Now, we know what they are because we just went through talking about that a few minutes ago, but a really important piece of this is this table. So what this table is telling us, and I'm going to go full screen here. What this table is telling us is that for Azure Static Web Apps to work, it needs to know 3 things. 1, it needs to know where is your code. You've got to tell it where is the app located in your repository. And by default, it'll look at the root. That's what / means. We're going to tell it something different because we have a Svelte, React, Angular, and Vue app all in the same repo. The second piece is it needs to know where does your application put its code once npm run builds. So when npm run builds, does it put it in dist or public or somewhere else? And then finally, and this is optional, where's your API located? We're not going to have an API, so we're going to leave that alone.
Cool.
So we have a couple questions in the chat. You want to answer those, Craig, out loud?
Yeah. So the branch, if you're tracking directly along with what we're doing, the branch is Svelte/TS. And once again, as John said, when you go to generate your repo, it's really important that you click that little checkbox that says include all branches. And so once you do that, you'll have it available to you. And so, yeah, that's the one you want to track on.
And that's great, Craig. And if they have the main branch, that'll work too. It just won't be TypeScript.
Right. Yeah.
So the important things here, app location and app artifact. In our Svelte app, we're going to show people how you learn that out, and also with React and Angular. So once we tell Azure Static Web Apps where the code is located, it's then going to automatically set up what's called a GitHub action. That's a fancy word for a YAML file that's going to get generated and added to your repo. And it's going to basically be used every time you push to GitHub. It's going to rebuild your app and deploy it to Azure for you. So we don't have functions, so we're going to skip this step, and we're going to go right to the exercise, Craig.
Cool. Oh, wait,
All right.
What's happening here?
This is the magical sandbox. It's magical because it's just super easy to use.
Okay.
All right, so what's a sandbox, Craig? I'm going to click activate while you explain it. And everybody should click activate.
Yes, please do. And there's a couple step process that goes on in here, but essentially a sandbox is a place for us to create Azure services available just for you as you go through this tutorial completely for free. You don't have to create an Azure account. It's all tied to your GitHub account that you're logged in with. And it basically just gives you, is it 3 or 4 hours? I think it's 3 hours.
We're going to find out, but let's click on review permissions too, everybody, while Craig's explaining this.
But it's really that simple. It's just a place for you to have free Azure services available to you for a short period of time to do all the testing that you need to do inside a tutorial like this. So
the way I like to explain it is it's free Azure.
Yes.
It's like Oprah. She's like, free Azure for you. You get a free Azure. You get a free Azure. And as long as you got a GitHub account, you can sign in with that here.
Right.
All right, so it's going to set that up. That'll be ready to go in a minute. Make sure you still selected your framework of choice. And then we'll slide down to look at some of the steps here. This is where I'm going to go half screen again so we can use Visual Studio Code at the same time as going through Learn. So good, 100%. We have 4 hours.
4 hours. Okay, nice.
So we're going to create a static web app. And the first step is we're going to get the extension called Azure Static Web Apps. If you click on this, you'll see the Azure Static Web Apps preview, extension for VS Code. And then if you click on the install button, it'll tell you, oh, would you like to install into VS Code? And you can click continue. Now, I already have mine, so I'm going to skip that, but you should go ahead and do that if you haven't already. And when you're done, you see this little button over here, Craig?
Yeah, I do. Let's see the extensions button, right?
Yeah, it kind of looks like Tetris or something.
Yeah, it does.
So I'm dating myself here. So you click on that button, that's the extensions, and then we can look for static web apps. It's another way you can get to it. You can click here, and if it wasn't installed, you could click on install over here on the right-hand side. So I have it, so we're good on this one. Make sure you have it for yours. It should only take a minute to install. And when you're done, it might give you a reload button to click, so you can reload it. Next, we're going to, on Visual Studio Code, we have to sign into Azure. Now, don't worry if you don't have your own Azure account. We're going to sign into the one we just used in the sandbox. So from here, what it's telling me, we'll get rid of a few of those pages, is we're going to go to the command palette, which is F1, or we can go to View Command Palette, which is up here, Command Palette, and choose Azure Sign In, like that. It's going to tell you to pick an account. So whatever you logged in with. And then you can close that page. And we'll go back to the exercise. That should give us everything we need to log in. It basically just told Visual Studio Code that we are who we say we are. So now we're going to click on this big button over here. It's the Azure logo on the left-hand side. Oh, wait, I skipped a step, Craig. Step 1.
You did. Yes, we need to point VS Code to the folder that has your code in it.
It's kind of important.
It is.
I'm already kind of there, but let's do this. I want to go to the root of the app. So I want to be in my static web app.
Mm-hmm.
And right from there, you want to type in or just do open folder. Let's go this way. If I click on that button up here, I can choose open folder. And then I can go find my play folder, which is right here, my static web app 2, and then click open.
Good.
And VS Code should refresh.
And there's all of our files. Nice.
Boy, I almost skipped a really important step.
It would have been pretty obvious there in a second.
Cool. So hopefully you all see that now. And there's my Cell tab. Hooray. And then I'm going to click on the Azure icon. And I'm going to see a bunch of Azure-y things. We're going to minimize everything we don't need. There is the Azure Static Web Apps extension. Next, it says put your mouse over the plus sign. And I assume we're going to click it. And it's asking me for where's the static web app going to go. Now, if you don't see this concierge subscription thing here, there's a way, the extension will automatically prompt you for this too. So what you'll see is you might see I've got a lot of subscriptions going on. I'm going to select mine. You won't have this option. But if you don't see this option here, what you can do is go to the command palette again, which is F1, choose select subscriptions, and then you can select which ones you want to use. So I'm going to hit plus on Static Web Apps. Choose Concierge. That's the free Azure Sandbox. Then I'm going to type in, or actually I'm just going to copy, my first static web app.
Isn't that kind of amazing that that subscription is even available to you within VS Code?
It is pretty cool. Then you got to choose your branch. Now I'm going to choose Svelte TS. You choose whatever branch you are using. Main is the one that the Learn module tells us to use. Next question is it's asking us where is the location of my code. My code is in Svelte app. So it's showing you all the folders in this structure. My app's actually one level down, not the root. So I'm going to choose that. Now it looks like I didn't actually select anything, but it's because the next step came up. This is where's your API or your functions. Now, I could say skip for now, which is at the bottom, because I don't have any functions. The next step here, we come back down to step 9, is type in public. So no matter what yours says here, make sure you type in public. This is where the Svelte app is going to stick its built assets. However, notice step 9 says public here. If I go back up and I choose, let's say, Angular, and I come back down to step 9, it doesn't say public, does it, Craig?
No. And that's because the configuration for each one of those frameworks is a little bit different of how the build process outputs its files. Exactly. So yeah, you definitely want to make sure that you put the right value there. And for Svelte, we want to have public in there.
So we're going to choose public. That's step. And then we're going to choose a location. Choose a location nearest you. I'm going to choose East US. And now it's going to give us an error message.
We don't like those.
No, but luckily step 11 shows, hey, look, it's giving the error message because it's trying to use the free concierge subscription. So we're going to choose select existing because that's what step 11 says.
But what it's trying to do is the extension will try to create a resource group for you automatically. And so when you're doing this outside of a tutorial, that's a really handy feature. But because of the permissions and the way the security is locked down for this concierge subscription, we need to use an existing one instead of creating a new one. So that's why that shows up, and you normally won't see that.
Now, these numbers may not match exactly, but the idea here is to select a resource group that's got this long, crazy name. We'll do that.
That's what I named my firstborn. I don't understand why.
Now, once the app is created, you're going to see this box down the bottom right-hand part of the window. We could click on that, but that's going to go away. So I want to show you something else, and that's step 14. Step 14 says go to the Explorer window, return to Static Web Apps. That's over here on the right-hand side, and select Open in Portal. So we're going to select the Concierge subscription. There's my Static Web App. We're going to choose Open in Portal, right like this.
Okay.
Now I'm going to go and put this side by side. So there's our portal. Here's our instructions. The next step says click the link in the screenshot below, which is right here. That's going to show us the status of your GitHub action runs. This is going to show us what happened when we did this. So here is Static Web Apps. I think it's because I've got my wrong branch there. There we go. And where is my action?
We need to go full screen on that.
Did I select the wrong branch when I did it? No, I did not. Let's see here. Is anybody else having that issue there in the chat? So here I've got two of these. One was created 18 minutes ago. This is the one I want to use. I'm going to delete that one just so nobody sees that one here. You didn't see that, don't worry. So here's the one I just created. There's my workflow. And let's look at this while we're figuring this out, because this is important. In this workflow, notice lines 30 through 32. This is where it shows exactly what I typed in before. It shows us here that we've got Svelte app as the folder for our code. I typed in API for the API location, and then public is where it's going to take our built assets. Yours may look different based on what you typed in, but this is where that stuff goes. So if you typed in the wrong value, don't worry. All you'd have to do is change these values in your local code, and then you would get those. So let's go back to actions here, and we should see an action automatically, Craig.
We should.
And we don't see one. So it's funny because it created the workflow right here, and it should have automatically created the GitHub action. I'll bet you GitHub was having an issue based upon how it generated my repo.
Yeah.
So let's show a different repo real quick. GitHub is having issues.
It's having issues.
Awesome, including downgraded performance for actions. Alessandro to the rescue on the chat.
Yes.
Thank you for explaining that. So folks, like any good developer or trainer, we have a backup. If you want to see how it's going to work, you can watch with me. This is shopathome.dev, and I can go look at my code in GitHub, and we can see an action right here. This one is one I ran 2 days ago. But what effectively would happen here is when you build your code and you click on the actions, which is what that portal brings us to, we can then see the workflow file, which we just looked at. And then we can click on build and deploy on the left. This will show us all the steps that ran. So the build and deploy step, when I open that up, you'll see things in here like using node, npm, the npm install, any messages that it has. And then at the very bottom, and I'm scrolling fast, line 222 for me, it shows, hey, your app deployed, and this is the URL it's at, which is commos and some numbers. And then you can click on that, and this is my Shop at Home app that I deployed. Now, that's a really ugly URL. I've actually assigned a custom domain to mine too, which is the Shop at Home URL. But that's what should have happened for us here if the actions were working at this time, which, that's life.
Right.
So if we go back to the Learn module, kind of see what should have happened here, it basically told us to do what we just did, watch the build, and then when you're done, we should be able to click on the link, which is view your website. Let me make this full screen. See this URL right here, Craig?
Mm-hmm.
Kind Bay. I like that.
Yeah. Very nice for a Friday afternoon.
So if you click on that, it would show you the app that was deployed. And right now it says it's waiting for it. That's because the GitHub actions aren't working at this moment in time, which is part of Murphy's Law. So once that's there, you've deployed your static web app. Now, because we're getting short on time, let's go to the next unit, which is talking about fallback routes. Hey, Craig, when you have an app and you go to like a URL like this one here, where I've got home or products.
Right.
When I go to those and I refresh, the server's actually looking for a page called home.html.
Yeah, it is.
But there ain't no such page.
That's a problem because, we only have one index.html page within our app.
So if I refresh, it should give me a 404. Let's do it.
Let's see.
Nope, no 404.
I feel lied to.
This is because I lied to you, Craig. This is because static web apps lets you set up what's called a fallback route. It basically says, okay, if somebody tries to hit the server and looks for a client-side route, we're going to go ahead and redirect them to whatever you want. So we create a file called routes.json. And when we do that, it sets up this routes right here. It says, go to any route that hits the server, serve index HTML with a status code of 200. And that's code that we can add to our application. So effectively what we do is we go to VS Code, and the steps will show us this in just a moment. And we're going to go over to our public folder, and we're going to add that file. So let's go ahead to the exercise now.
Oh, so you're creating a brand new file. It's not something that's already in there.
Exactly. And I'm back in VS Code, and the first step says make sure you do a git pull. Why am I doing that, Craig?
Well, I think it's because that workflow file was generated for you by Azure Static Web Apps. So if it's up there, you're going to need to have it down on your local machine so that your git commit history sorts itself out correctly.
Exactly. So it's there, and then we're going to go ahead and do this routes file. I'm going to go to the public folder. I'm going to do new file, call it routes, plural.json. And then I'm going to paste in the code because I've got that copy button right there. And then we would push our changes up to Git. Now I'm going to skip this step because we know GitHub Actions isn't working at this moment in time. Thank you, Alessandro, for letting us know about that.
Yes.
But if you push this up, this would fire off the GitHub action again, which would then redeploy to Azure. And then you'd have the same kind of working app that we saw in the Shop at Home app over here, where we can refresh on any page we want. So a quick quiz on this for everybody.
All right.
When you make changes to your app, how do you publish an update to Azure Static Web Apps? If you want to publish a change to your app, should you delete it?
That doesn't seem like the right answer. I'm going to pass on that one.
Should you push your commits to a watch branch and create a pull request to the watch branch?
I like that. Let's see what other options we have here.
Create a new GitHub Actions workflow. That sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah, I don't like writing YAML.
Create and push a new create and push a new branch to your Git repository. But that's not what we're trying to accomplish, is it?
No, I'm going to go with number 2 on that one.
All right. We're going to go number 2.
Okay.
On to number 2. How do you view the progress of building and redeploying after you make changes?
All right, go to your production URL. Let's see, go to your resources in the portal and look at the configuration. It seems close. Push your commits. I don't think that'll give us progress. And go to the repository at github.com. Navigate to the actions if actions are working.
If actions are working at the moment in time, yes.
That's going to
so that would be the answer here. And the final one's how do you configure your app so that when you navigate to like /about, it serves index HTML, which is like a fallback route.
Right. Which, I mean, number 1 looks so very familiar.
That's exactly what we just did. So,
yep.
All right, let's see if we're right. Congratulations. You've answered all the questions correctly. That's really cool. I'm going to click continue. And that brings us to the end of everything with our links that we can use to get there. So Craig, I'm a little disappointed that we couldn't try the full action from scratch, but everybody, the great thing to know here is you can try this again later. This is always available. It's free. So you can go to TSConf-learn, that's aka.ms TSConf-learn, and try this with React, Vue, Angular, Svelte. And after you go through that, I'm way behind on those. Let's go back. Here we are.
Bonus.
Oh, these are bonus slides. You can also do authentication, which is very cool. So check this out. It's all on the docs. If you're interested in authentication or authorization, a great gentleman named Craig Shoemaker put a lot of documentation up on the Azure Docs site on all of these great topics up here. So authentication, authorization are all up here, and you have all these resources available to you. You can go to Learn, which we just walked through with you, or you can go to docs at tsconf-swa for static web apps. And let's say that you have another use, not just React, Angular, Svelte, or Vue. You can go to this repo here called Hello Worlds. And what that will do, drag it over onto my other screen, is you can see a repository that has, go down to the README, Alpine, Angular, Aurelia, Elm, Ember, Flutter, Gatsby, Gridsome, Knockout, jQuery. Whatever you're using, all these examples here are here for you to try for free. So you can try any of these with Azure Static Web Apps.
And just really quick, I know we're almost out of time. I just wanted to mention Steve had a really good question. He wanted to know why we had to do that pull before we did the push again. And so the reason behind that is when you create your static web apps instance in Azure, at that moment, it's going to create the workflow file for you. So it generates that and puts it up into GitHub. So since that's there, it's created a git commit in order to add that file. And so you need to bring that git commit history down to your local machine. And then once you have that, then you can push up the changes to your route JSON file. Otherwise, you'll just get an error saying, hey, the Git's out of sync, and it'll bark at you that way. So that just saves you from seeing that error.
And that's a great question, Steve. Thanks for asking it, and thanks for answering, Craig. And one thing for everybody to point out, and I hate there's a little confusion on this, but because we couldn't use the GitHub action because it wasn't working at the moment in time, the app that I showed, the Fallback app, my working app, already had the routes file in it, and it already had these fixes all ready to go because it's a production app. So that's why it may have appeared to you that the fallback route already worked. That's because my production app was already working. But the first time you do this, it will not be there because it doesn't know if you want it or not. And I hope that answers your question, Steve. So with all that, I want to thank you all for coming. Thank you, Craig, for helping me out through this. Thank you, TSConf, and all the folks for producing it. Thanks for our sponsors. And thank you, Alessandro, for the chat.